For those who grew up poor, what did you consider a luxury? In middle school I was on reduced school meals, so it would be 40 for lunch. So my parents would always give me 2 quarters every morning for lunch. Now the cafeteria would also sell cookies which wasn't part of the lunch set for 50 each. So saving 10 each day I could afford 1 cookie by Friday's lunch. Good times. Edit, Rip and Bugs. I was wondering why my phone was blowing up at 7 am. Haha. You just triggered a memory from my childhood. Also had reduced lunch at $0. 40. Also got $0. 50 from my parents. Except I bought 2 pretzel rods with it which were 5 cents each. Or I would wait 2 days so I can buy a fruit roll up at 20 cents. In middle school my parents were doing better, so I didn't qualify for reduced lunch. My parents gave me $2 a day to get subsidized lunch. But I was so programmed to worry about money, I would buy a dinner roll and a Sunny Delight. Because that totaled $0.90 and I would save the rest. I put the money in my sock drawer. Months later my parents found the money and asked where I got it. I explained what I was eating for lunch and I was saving the rest in case we need it. I didn't understand at the time, but that look on my father's face was heartbreak. He then ordered that I use the money to order a full meal going forward. Grew up pretty poor in Arkansas in a trailer. I literally got a door to my bedroom for Christmas one year. It probably still was the best gift I ever received. I grew up poor in Arkansas too. We didn't have central heat or air, so I had to chop firewood for our wood burning stove to stay warm in the winter. We lived way out in the Bobbiners too. So convincing my parents to spend gas to take me to a friend's house was really hard. My BFF's parents cooked meth, so their house was even more off than mine. School parties where everyone brought something to share for lunch. If you don't bring something, you don't get to participate. I brought 2 carrots after not being able to afford school lunch for 2 years. Even the teacher laughed at me. My young self just decided that day that some people don't deserve lunch. I don't know if anyone can relate, but in about 3rd maybe 4th grade, me and my twin brother had a music class where we were both required to buy a recorder, like a plastic flute thing. Well, my mom said we didn't have the money, so my twin brother and I tore the whole house up in search of $6 for 2 recorders. We brought a Ziploc bag full of change, pennies, nickels, dimes, etc. I think the teacher felt sorry for us, cause she paid for our recorders when the rest of the students left the room. Gave us the Ziploc bag back. Thank you, Mrs. Albrecht. In high school, my boyfriend, who became my husband, and his family picked up pretty early on that I was poor and that my family was pretty dysfunctional. They really let me into their family and took care of me in a sweet, not pity, way. I was super into art, so his mom found a neighborhood art teacher that did like basically small group art classes, and it was so cool. Anyway, she usually charged like $100 for all the supplies, time, etc. My mom knew how excited I was, and I never asked for anything, so she told me to ask the teacher to wait until her next paycheck. The teacher was like, sure. By the time I brought that check to her, I think my boyfriend's mom talked to her, and she ripped it up and said I got a scholarship for the class. Honestly, it gives me such good vibes thinking about it till this day. Staying at someone's house who wasn't poor, like a relative or friend. Their house was also so clean, beautiful, pictures on the wall, knickknacks on the counter, and carpet you could play on because it was clean. I spent my entire teenage years hiding where I lived, going out to eat at a restaurant. My mom had 7 children in 10 years, 1950 to 1960. I remember having a whole bottle, those smallish glass ones, that came out of the machine for 10 cents, of soft drink to myself instead of sharing one bottle between all 7 of us. I was perhaps 5 years old. I still remember this as the best thing ever. A hot shower. Cold showers were always available, but when you scraped enough cash to get some diesel fuel and get the burner to kick on long enough to have a hot shower, man, absolutely nothing better. New clothes. I grew up pretty poor, no TV, no toys, but had a Sears catalog. My dad got in a serious accident when I was in 4th grade and almost lost his life. He won a small settlement from the community college he was working at, and I was able to buy new clothes for the first time in my life. Before this, all I ever had were hand-me-downs from my cousin and donation clothes from the church. Most were worn to the point of having patches on the knees. The worst part about getting new clothes for the first time is I felt terrible the whole time picking out new clothes, because I always felt like a financial burden to my parents. I remember going to Miller's Outpost and picking out typical 80s clothes, Op, TNC, etc. Close bracket. It's funny how growing up poor affects my everyday choices. For better or worse. It'll never outgrow some of the feelings I had as a poor kid, and I feel for any kid who has to endure a childhood of poverty. It will affect them and their choices for the rest of their life. My folks always had 3 meals a day for us, but clothes were always a treat. It might be a pair of pants and a shirt, but my folks always made sure it was something that we were able to pick out, and it always felt so special. They sacrificed a lot for it. In fact, my mom told me a few years ago that in order to provide that, my parents didn't buy new clothes or much of anything for well over a decade when we were younger. With my first real job out of school, I was able to take my dad to a shop and have him pick out a suit of his choice and get it fitted. He's confessed that it's one of the moments that's really stuck with him. He still has that suit and has worn it to both my sisters and my weddings. But yeah, some of those feelings and habits don't really go away. Regarding clothes, they still get worn till they can't be patched anymore, and I loathe to throw them away. I gotta stop there, because this is actually making me surprisingly emotional. For my school's Spirit Week, they had a thrift shop day, where most everyone dressed in old ratty clothes, or the weirdest stuff they could find in a thrift shop. Needless to say, as someone whose clothes were 80% secondhand, it was an eye-opener. Until the age of 12, I thought that you weren't allowed to buy things that weren't on sale. My mom only bought things when they were on sale and or she had a coupon. So I thought that the non-sale items weren't being sold. A new winter coat. I don't remember having a new winter coat until I was probably 14 or 15. They had always been hand-me-downs from my cousins. They were usually at least 10 years old by the time I got them, and the stuffing would be all clumped up. Taking a bath. I mean, we bathed every night, but it was by heating up water that we would go to the park down the road to get in 5-gallon jugs and filling up a mop bucket to wash off with. Staying over at a friend or family member's house and getting to take an actual shower was amazing though. Air conditioning. Sometimes we had a jacked up old window unit that would cool down my parents' room on the hottest of summer nights, and we would sleep in sleeping bags on their floor. Sometimes it was broke. Sometimes it just wasn't hot enough to justify running it. Never during the day though. That's what the library was for. Buying new clothes. The days I justify ordering all kinds of dumb stuff online, but I've always felt a mental block on buying new clothes. It feels like an unjustified luxury because I always got by on second-hand clothes and free t-shirts. McDonald's. Clothes that fit. Soda. Having a toy that other kids thought was cool. Edit. Okay, I never did the stupid thank you edit. But damn everyone, thank you for letting me wake up to such great responses. Thanks to everyone for sharing. My heart feels so nicer and connecting with everyone like this. Having a bedroom to yourself. I can't recall a single time before I had my own place that I ever had a bedroom to myself. At first it was me and my grandmother because my mom was out drinking. Then my grandmother died and my mom had another baby, which me and him shared a room in a small apartment. Then I couch hopped and stayed at friend's house in my teenage years. Then I went to live with my dad, who was also poor, and lived with my grandmother in a rundown trailer, and he slept on a foam mattress in the living room, and I slept on a love seat. I'm 25 now, and I do really well for myself overall. I have a nice 2-bedroom, 2-bath house. I've got 2 cars that are reliable. And I have a girlfriend and little boy that I love more than anything. I grew up in a really bad position, honestly, so being able to provide for my son the way my parents never did for me really gives me a sense of pride and accomplishment. I don't want him to ever wonder where he's going to sleep or to have to worry about anything that I ever had to growing up. To this day me and my mother don't have a good relationship and my dad is trying to be better and be a part of my son's life. Giving him the things I never had is enough for me. Renting a movie from Blockbuster the first weekend of every month. My brother and I got to pick any movie we wanted as long as it wasn't rated R. On really special nights, we even got a 2-liter bottle of Sprite for the family to share. Restaurants were definitely somewhere at the top of my list. I lived through the tail end of apartheid in South Africa, so we weren't allowed into restaurants. Also, non-iceberg lettuce, dairy products, like a full glass of milk, cheese, cottage cheese, yogurt, flavored milk, longs, a dining table and family meals at the table, vacations that didn't involve staying with relatives. Going places during school vacation. The kids would be all like what? Question mark? Yeah, I've never been to this amusement park. Question mark? No. Trisha. My family doesn't even have a car, which is another luxury to me. Sandwich meat. I remember all too vividly getting out the bread to make a sandwich and being able only spread mustard on the bread and calling it a sandwich. Also, firewood. Growing up in a house with no heat, firewood was not only a luxury but a necessity. We'd spend the spring and summer gathering wood and slowly splitting and stacking it to burn throughout the winter. Poor planning could lead to cold mornings and a desperate search for free timber. I remember driving around in a truck looking for people that cut down a tree and put the wood on the side of the road so we could take it home and split it. My mom bought me the bag of chips I wanted as a birthday present. Edit. And the bad thing is I'm pretty sure my mom could afford it without it being my birthday present. Single mom of 3, but we had a decent house. It was just the food that was bad. Nothing we wanted ever. No saying what was in the house. We had a babysitter that lived in a 2-story house and that was way more fancy than our trailer home. I used to go through hundreds of feet of all kinds of vine, thorn, brush, plenty of poison oak too, be covered in burrs, chiggers, ticks to get at wild blackberries. They had thorns too, and fill my milk jugs with them. They were down in a low boggy place that was just inaccessible. No trail, no openings, just a hell wall of green that led up to some swamp, bog here and there, so plenty of mosquitoes too. Because my folks sure weren't buying them by the pint, not even as good as the wild ones, and once I had tasted them, I ducking wanted them. Those things were my girls before puberty. I'm sure I went through more to get my snack of them than I ever did for anything in my life, and I wasn't even a fat kid. I just, obsession. Come back home all bloodied and scratched up, my dad telling me I looked like I jumped inside a sack full of cats, helping himself to my jugs of treasures. Mom with the Neosporin, the cure for it all. Being poor in the Philippines meant no hot water for showers. This was manageable during dry season, since it was always hot. But during rainy seasons, when it would cool outside more, it really sucked. I just never enjoyed showers. When I moved to the US I had hot waters and baths. Holy crap. I now love getting clean. I didn't see my dad much, but sometimes when I spent the weekend with him, he would take me to the dollar store and let me pick out 2 or 3 toys. I thought he was the most generous dad in the world. My mom couldn't afford much and rarely bought me toys, so I was always overcome with awe. I didn't understand how cheap a dollar was at 4 or 5. Christmas presents. I was a kid, and one year for Christmas, when I was young, before I could recognize that I was making any kind of larger point, I said that I wanted my parents to just give my presents to the kids who didn't have anything. But I didn't know that I was one of those kids. I wonder what they thought when a kid said that to them. I wonder if it hurt them or inspired them. The really important thing is relationships. The people in our lives aren't some kind of replacement for things. People are the most valuable things to us. Fuck the garbage. Don't buy anything this Christmas. Just spend it with your loved ones and genuinely express your love for them. That's the value. Things are garbage. People make a difference. I was 12 and asked for a typical Thanksgiving big family dinner with everyone for my birthday, August. Still one of the best presents ever. I lucked out having a family that really enjoys spending time together. Nowadays we have our Thanksgiving the next weekend after, and Christmas in January. Maybe not this year though. so that there is never any rush or conflict for spouse families, and all 30 plus of my sisters, brothers, nieces, nephews, grandkids etc. all agree our get-togethers are way more fun and relaxed. Sitting down with your family for dinner each night, air conditioning, television, a heater that wasn't one of those cheap little dollar store models that smelled like burning metal, matching dinnerware, cups made of glass, reliable internet, a clothes dryer, being driven to school, or living in an area where you could safely walk to school. Sounds like you had an upbringing like mine. Parents had a business that was not doing well, so we often stayed there while they worked through the night. We never had dinner as a family. We ate when we were hungry enough to make something. Had a TV, old rank arena. Heaters were a big no-no because they used too much electrify. But there were heat presses at the factory, so in winter we would take our little mattresses and sleep on the concrete next to those. No clothes dryer for the same reason. We got driven to school because there was no bus from the industrial estate where the business was. Hershey's chocolate syrup. I was used to a 8 to 12 ounce glass of milk with a feather touch squeeze of drops of chocolate add when I was around 6 or 7. It would barely tinge the milk a light malt color, but that's all mom would allow for years. 13 years later my baby sister is old enough to have her vocalized demands and the like. I'm old enough to serve her while mom ignores her. But we are doing so much better financially, so we always have a bottle of syrup on hand, and she gets the big 24 ounce tumblers of milk and I have to squeeze enough syrup out to make the chocolate dark muddy brown, or she cries I'm ripping her off. I remember in 8th grade on my birthday at school one of my teachers asked me what gifts I had gotten. He asked in front of the whole class. I excitedly shared that I would be getting contact lenses. My parents let me choose one thing that I wanted, and I desperately wanted to stop wearing the broken glasses I had, which I usually didn't wear. One of the boys in class made a comment like contacts aren't a present? And my teacher had to explain to him again in front of everyone that for some families they are too expensive not to be a luxury. After that experience I worked 2 and 3 jobs in high school so I could buy myself and my brothers the things we needed. The first thing I bought with my money from my first job as a hostess at a diner was a queen size bed because my twin mattress was about 20 years old, and at 15 I was having back problems and issues with rusted springs poking me. My school had a uniform where girls had to wear skirts. I was wearing my brother's socks and they had loose elastic, because of which they would slip and bundle around my ankles. My teacher asked me to change the socks, and I told her that we were poor and we could not buy new socks. So yeah, socks. We had 1 or 2 pairs and 1 uniform. We did more laundry in the bathroom sink, using bar soap than anywhere else. They all were stretched out and in bad shape very quickly, but that was it for the year. Same with underwear. Sadly, we weren't poor. We had a lot of kids and a mother addicted to high-end jewelry. Plus drinking coffee for breakfast my entire childhood instead of eating powdered milk, more than 1 pair of pants, no soda, shoes that fit. My first real haircut at 13. I paid for it with babysitting money. Lunch to take to school because we didn't get money to buy it. Shampoo, we used Dawn or bar soap. Medical care, my little sister fell on glass, had muscles sticking out, and was begging me to push it back in and put stitches in. We had excellent insurance, a winter coat, my own brush, toothpaste instead of baking soda, a Halloween costume, and books. Weirdly it helped all us kids were in the same boat. We weren't necessarily unhappy because we could complain to each other. As the older kids got jobs, starting with paper routes for the boys and babysitting for the girls at age 10, there started to be a trickle-down effect. The older kids helped the younger. My oldest brother bought me my first quality shirt and non-hand-me-down or homemade dress, were super clothes growing up, and I feel lucky about that. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.